Welcome back to the sweatshop today, boys and girls. We are looking at a timing belt tensioner and water pump. And today I'm going to attempt to explain to you their purpose and why you should or shouldn't change them. It is important for you to know this information because it can cost you dearly. So let's take a look at these components and see what each of them do. When you have a vehicle that has a timing belt, water pump, and tensioner, you will often hear your mechanic tell you that you should change them. This is true for the most part, but there are two factors that determine whether you should change them. The two main factors are what is listed by the manufacturer in the owner's manual for the interval to actually change these components, and then what actual time or mileage has elapsed on the actual components to be changed. Timing belts can be in service anywhere from 60,000 kilometers to 200,000 kilometers plus. It is manufacturer specific and something that you should reference your owner's manual for the proper information regarding your vehicle. Don't be left in the dark. Take a look at it for yourself. Some mechanics will know for certain manufacturers when you should and shouldn't change them, but we're not all computers. We're not going to know for every single car. So you have to look at that sort of stuff. Looking at the belt physically, unless there's physical damage, won't tell you much. The other thing that people seem to miss is that the time itself has quite a bit to do with the actual timing belt. If your timing belt is rated for, say, 160,000 kilometers of service, that's great. But if you look at the owner's manual properly, you'll also see the majority of them will list an actual year. Your owner's manual will say things such as your timing belt is good for a period of 160,000 kilometers or 7 years, whichever comes first. It is important to understand that 7 years doesn't mean 7 times 2. I often get a lot of people who will say, well, it's only got 140,000 and I've got to do it at 160. Yes, but the belt is 14 years old or whatever it may be. The reason why is because these things are made out of rubber. Yes, they have Kevlar and other, high strength fibers inside to keep these things together because rubber isn't a really great material on its own. But regardless, you can see over time what happens is the belt starts to form these cracks and then they get bigger and they get bigger and then they snap. If this thing snaps, what happens to your engine is your piston and valve will kiss each other if you have an interference engine. What that means is that the engine will come into contact with the valves if your timing system fails. So if you have a timing chain, a timing gear, or a timing belt like this, and the belt fails or the mechanism that times the engine fails, the pistons will kiss the valve. They're never supposed to come into contact with each other. If you have a non-interference engine, you're okay. Nothing will happen to the engine. It'll just shut off and won't run again. So you'll be paying for a tow and then the service to fix it. There are very few engines out there that are actually non-interference. The only one that I can think of off the top of my head is a Toyota engine from like the 1990s. The 4 cylinders were non-interference. But like 99% of the engines that are out there that still use timing belts or anything that did in the past are all interference. So it is a service that you should definitely find out whether you have to do or not. Now, what kills a timing belt? There are 3 main things. The first one we touched on, which is time itself and the belt degrading because of time and wear and heat and whatnot. Your second 2 items that can kill the belt are sitting in front of you, my friends. The tensioner or any of the pulleys that related to the timing system that actually touch the belt. And then the second thing would be contamination from, say, an oil seal or a leaking water pump. Let's talk about the tensioner first. The tensioner applies tension to the belt and it rolls on a bearing. Some of these bearings over time will fail, like everything. This one isn't that bad, but this one is an idler from Subaru, and this one's a common one for killing Subaru engines. It's much louder, and it also glitches a bit. Of course, you can't feel that, but you can maybe see it on camera when it hooks the inside part of the bearing. Those are the types of things that will physically damage or destroy the belt. Of course, destroying your engine if you have an interference motor. The second thing is oil contamination from a bad crank seal or cam seal or some sort of leak that you have or coolant that leaks out from this thing. Now, the reason why the water pump is often recommended, but is not recommended generally in the owner's manual, is because on most cars with a timing belt water pump setup, the water pump is usually driven by the belt and then encapsulated in that same area. So from a service standpoint, it makes sense to replace the pump because you're in an area where you're essentially replacing this, and it takes quite a bit of work to usually get to this belt on most engines. So it's smart of the customer and the mechanic to recommend replacing the pump. Subaru pumps usually last and will outlast the actual belt by quite a margin, but it's not worth the risk, and it's not worth losing an engine just because you want to save $200 or $300. It's always worth it to just replace the pump at the same time. It can be costly, but it will potentially save your motor. The other thing with these things is that they start to leak. You can see on this one that it is actually good. This here is where it's an inspection hole essentially, and on the other side behind this impeller there is a seal and also a bearing. They can fail as well. If your belt's got 200,000, this thing hasn't been touched, it's going to have the same sort of mileage. Do yourself a favor and change it. It's not enough just to change the belt. Yes, it's cheaper, but these components should be changed at the same time. Not only the tensioner itself, but the idlers if you have a Subaru or other V6 motors that will have idlers as well as a tensioner, change them. Because if they fail, your money's pissing down the drain now because you've changed just the belt and paid some crappy mechanic to not do a proper job. Second thing you want to look at when looking at timing systems are hydraulic tensioners. These little things are quite expensive. This particular thing is off of a Subaru. The bearing's good. It's quiet. But as you can see there's some residue, and that is not from a leaking crank seal. That is the actual oil, the hydraulic oil leaking out of the actual tensioner, which means that this has a high possibility for not holding pressure on the belt, allowing timing to skip. If your timing skips, again, if you have an interference engine, it will kiss the valve. So boys and girls, I really hope that this answers most of the questions you guys have out there about these components and why you should or shouldn't change them. If it didn't and it's left you more confused, comment in the comment section down below and I will try my best to answer these questions in another video. If it did answer your questions, however, and you'd like to book a timing belt service, call me up if you're in the Toronto area. If you're not, find an honest mechanic. There are proper mechanics out there who you can find who will service the vehicle properly and recommend the actual components needed so that you don't have to do jobs twice because the guy didn't recommend a crank seal or a water pump or, a tensioner at the same time of doing a timing belt service. It is important that you understand how your specific car works and what other components you should be touching at the same time. And for guidance on that, because all cars are different, consult your owner's manual. Don't forget that little book that they give you, or CD now. Do they even still make CDs? Whatever. That little book that they give you is a treasure chest of information that you can actually use. It's not just paper you can throw on the fire or into the garbage when you sell the car. It is actually important and beneficial for the customer. So consult it, and good luck out there. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss one of my new videos. We will see you in the next one. Peace! Welcome back to the sweatshop today, boys and girls. We are looking... Oh, I say girls? Damn it. Some timing belts will range any... So they'll say, for instance, So your owner's manual will say, for instance, that your timing belt can be... Your owner man, if you have a oh, don't hit the camera, fuck. These things here, basically, they do what it says in the name. They tension the belt. Genius, Jimmy. These things apply tension. The hydraulic oil, find an honest mechanic. There are honest mechanics out there who will do these things for a proper job so that you don't have to do jobs If you liked the video, please like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to